The Sentinel wasn't just another supernatural horror thriller, it was a film that crossed lines nobody in Hollywood was ready for. A climax so disturbing, so morally questionable, that some critics called it the cruelest thing a major studio ever put on screen. And buried under decades of controversy, there are scenes, choices, and behind-the-scenes decisions that the people involved would rather you never knew about. That Brooklyn brownstone hid more than a gateway to hell. It hid secrets that nearly destroyed careers. These are 12 of the creepiest facts about the Sentinel, and hidden in them is the shocking truth that the most horrifying thing about this movie didn't come from the script, it came from what the director did to real people on set. Number 1. Director Michael Winner already had a reputation before this film. He'd made Death Wish in 1974 and turned Charles Bronson into a vigilante icon. But behind that box office success was a man known on sets for being aggressive, confrontational, and nearly impossible to argue with. Reports say crew members on the Sentinel described the atmosphere as tense from day one. Winner ran his set like a dictator, cold silence when he walked in, no debates, no collaboration. You did what he said or you were gone. And that iron fist style, it led directly to the most controversial decision in the entire production, because number 2 is where it gets ugly. Number 2. The climax of The Sentinel takes place in a hellish sequence where demons pour out of the gateway, twisted faces, deformed bodies. A nightmare parade designed to terrify the audience. Here's the problem. Those weren't actors and prosthetics. Michael Winner cast real people with severe physical deformities and disabilities to play the demons. Real people, used as monsters. According to production accounts, Winner sought them out deliberately for the visual shock value. No heavy makeup needed, no special effects budget wasted, just human beings put on screen to be horrifying. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Critics called it exploitative, cruel, one of the most ethically indefensible choices in horror history, and what makes it worse? The studio knew. Which brings us to number 3. Number 3. Universal Pictures distributed The Sentinel, and according to reports, executives were aware of Winner's casting decisions for the finale. So why didn't they stop it? What were they afraid of? Or what did they want? The truth is, controversy sells tickets. The film was positioned to compete in a market that had just been blown open by The Exorcist and The Omen. Studios were hungry for the next big horror shock. Some accounts suggest Universal leaned into the disturbing content. The stale air of corporate calculation hung over the whole project. They wanted a hit. They got a scandal instead. And the casting nightmare didn't stop with the finale. Not even close. Number 4. Look at the cast list for The Sentinel, and your jaw will hit the floor. Christina Rains starred as the model who moves into the cursed brownstone, but surrounding her were Ava Gardner, Burgess Meredith, Jose Ferrer, Arthur Kennedy, Martin Balsam, Jerry Orbach, John Carradine, and Eli Wallach. That's an absurd amount of talent for a mid-budget horror film in 1977. Now watch this. Buried even deeper in the cast in tiny roles were faces nobody recognized yet. Christopher Walken, Jeff Goldblum, Tom Berenger, and Beverly D'Angelo. All of them years away from stardom. All of them working for almost nothing on a horror movie most of them would later barely mention in interviews. What were they running from? Or running toward? Either way, the set they walked onto was stranger than they expected. Number 5. The Sentinel was filmed on location in Brooklyn Heights, and the brownstone used for the exterior was a real building. Crew members reportedly described the location shoots as eerie even before cameras rolled. Narrow hallways, buzzing overhead lights that flickered without explanation, cold drafts in rooms with no open windows. Now, was it haunted? Of course not. Probably not. But the atmosphere bled into the performances. Christina Rains later spoke about how isolating the shoot felt, how Winner kept her emotionally on edge between takes. Some directors build tension through trust. Winner, according to multiple accounts, built it through control and discomfort. The sweat on the actors' faces wasn't always acting, and the discomfort went beyond the set. It followed the film straight into the ratings board. Number 6. The Sentinel ran into serious trouble with the MPAA. The film contained sequences that pushed hard against the limits of an R rating in 1977, including a graphic masturbation scene involving Christina Rains' character that left censors uncomfortable. Reports say the ratings board demanded cuts. Winner fought back. Here's the scary part. The version that made it to theaters was already trimmed, and it was still shocking enough to make audiences walk out. What was in the uncut version? According to some accounts, the original cut was significantly more explicit in both the sexual content and the violence of the finale. Pieces of it were scrapped, locked away. Parts of the original vision simply vanished from public view. Number 7. There are persistent rumors of an extended cut of the Sentinel that has never been officially released. A longer version, reportedly running 10 to 15 minutes longer than the theatrical cut, that included additional scenes of psychological torment, expanded nightmare sequences, and more graphic footage from the climax. Was it real? Some crew members claimed it existed. Others said it was just an assembly cut, never meant to be seen by anyone outside the editing room. But the idea of a buried, more extreme Sentinel has haunted collectors and horror fans for decades. That metal door between the audience and the full film has never really opened, and the mystery only deepens when you look at what they changed in the story itself. Number 8. Jeffrey Konvitz wrote the original 1974 novel that The Sentinel was based on, and he also co-wrote the screenplay with Michael Winner. But the adaptation wasn't smooth. The book had a slower, more psychological build. Winner wanted spectacle. He wanted visceral horror. According to accounts, key subplots from the novel were gutted to make room for more shocking set pieces. Character depth was traded for dread. Konvitz reportedly clashed with Winner over the direction, but Winner had final say. The result was a film that felt more like a haunted house assault than the cerebral thriller the source material promised. Some fans of the novel never forgave that trade. And the tension between writer and director mirrored a bigger battle happening behind the scenes. Number 9. The budget for The Sentinel was modest by major studio standards, reportedly around $3.5 million. That's tight for a film with this many name actors and this many elaborate sequences. So corners were cut. Here's where it gets weird. The practical effects team had to improvise constantly. Prosthetics were minimal because Winner had already decided to use real faces for the demons. Lighting tricks replaced expensive optical effects. Some of the most unsettling shots in the film were achieved not through technology, but through raw, cheap, almost guerrilla filmmaking techniques. Blood that looked too real, shadows that moved wrong. The low budget didn't weaken the horror. In some ways, it made it nastier. And that desperate, scrappy energy almost derailed the whole production at one critical moment. Number 10. Reports say that during the filming of the climactic gateway sequence, conditions on set became genuinely dangerous. Dozens of extras and cast members were packed into tight, poorly ventilated spaces for hours. The lighting rigs generated intense heat. Winner pushed for take after take, demanding more intensity, more chaos. According to some crew accounts, at least one performer suffered a minor injury during the sequence, and several extras had to be removed from set due to exhaustion and overheating. The air was thick, stale, hard to breathe, and through it all, Winner kept the cameras rolling. He wanted authentic panic, and he was willing to let real suffering create it. That philosophy, using real pain for fake scares, defined the entire production, and it almost caught up with the film after release. Number 11. When The Sentinel hit theaters in February 1977, the critical response was savage. Reviewers attacked the film's taste, its exploitation of disabled performers, and its reliance on shock over substance. Pauline Kael and other prominent critics didn't just dislike it, they condemned it. The controversy overshadowed everything else. Nobody talked about the performances, nobody talked about the cinematography, or the genuinely creepy premise. The scandal buried the art, and yet the film made money. It pulled in audiences precisely because of the outrage. The whispers, the warnings. People wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Studio panic turned into quiet satisfaction. The thing they should have been ashamed of became the thing that sold tickets. Funny how that works. And that twisted legacy leads to our final fact. Number 12. Here's what most people don't realize about The Sentinel. It was supposed to launch a franchise. Jeffrey Konvitz wrote a sequel novel called The Guardian in 1978, and there were early discussions about adapting it. But the controversy around the first film's production, especially the exploitation of disabled performers, made studios hesitant. The sequel never materialized in any form connected to the original. The Sentinel became a one and done. A cursed object in Hollywood's history, a film that was too successful to ignore and too shameful to repeat. The brownstone door closed, and nobody ever opened it again.